federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations.
The government is issuing an order with immediate effect under the Emergencies Act, authorizing Canadian financial institutions to temporarily cease providing financial services where the institution suspects that an account is being used to further the illegal blockades and occupations.
The police wiretapped me under the criminal code, presumably for participating in the Freedom Convoy on Parliament Hill. When you have a criminal code warrant of this magnitude, you are talking about homicides. You are talking about high-level criminal activity, organized crime, etc. We need to have our rights back. We need stewards who are going to be serving us, not dominating us.
David Menzies for Rebel News here on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. Well, folks, going back to late January, when the trucker Freedom Convoy first descended upon Parliament Hill, we witnessed so many examples of government overreach, and I'm talking about the truckers and their allies being demonized and vilified, all the way to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Now, speaking of government overreach, I want to introduce you to my guest. His name is Rob Stockey. He is a former police officer, and the story he has to tell about what happened to him as a result of the trucker convoy is equal parts egregious and disturbing. We plan to get justice for those citizens who had their privacy rights trampled upon by government and law enforcement. You can keep up to date with our efforts in this regard by visiting stopthewiretapping.com. That's stopthewiretapping.com. We're going to come at this from 4 different angles. First, we have to tell the story, because the story of the Ontario government wiretapping political dissidents is so outrageous that if we don't have the proof, no one would ever believe it. Then we've got a petition that we will deliver to the Attorney General of Ontario and the Federal Public Safety Minister if we find out the federal government was involved in this also. Our petition calls on the AG to stop the wiretapping of Canadians whose only crime is peacefully opposing government policy. Our third plan of attack is as follows. We want to find out the scale and scope of this wiretapping operation, and we want to know who exactly was wiretapped. We have an anonymous intake form at the same website, and that is stopthewiretapping.com, where you can submit your information, and we promise you, you will remain anonymous. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. As I mentioned in the preamble, you recently received a letter from the Attorney General of Ontario's office dated May 18th, 2022. And what did that letter say?
First of all, David, thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for covering this very important story. It's very important that the public hears about what's going on because it is so egregious. On the 18th, I received a letter from the Attorney General of Ontario basically explaining I was actually the object of intercepted communications, which is a wiretap. So for people who aren't familiar with the language, the police wiretapped me under the criminal code, presumably for participating in the Freedom Convoy on Parliament Hill.
And this was news to you that you were wiretapped. I understand, Rob, that after a certain period of time, the rules are that you have to inform the subject of the wiretapping that he or she was indeed wiretapped. So that's why you got the letter. What was the reason for the wiretapping of your phone?
Well, if you look at the letter, which I've provided, there is no reason provided. It just says that I was the subject of a wiretap from these 2 dates. And if you look at the actual section that I was wiretapped under, I was wiretapped under a section of exigent circumstances, meaning that The circumstances were so urgent and so worrisome about criminal activity that the government did not have time, or the officers investigating did not have time to qualify all of the potential issues and reasoning why they're getting this wiretap. So this wiretap was not only an emergency type of wiretap, but it was also allowed to be done ex parte. And what that means is there is no defense, there is no one to hear the opposite side of why this wiretap is taking place. It is valid for a maximum of 36 hours. That's the maximum window because it's such an exigent circumstance type of wiretap. If the offense or the reasonable grounds you actually have to have under the criminal code continues, you can apply for an actual wiretap. It gives you the time. So police are not losing potential evidence that they could get. I am not involved in any criminal activity. I have done nothing wrong. I am very conscientious about the things I say and do, both word and deed, because I have watched the media, the legacy media I'm talking about, completely lie about what actually took place on Parliament Hill.
They didn't say why your phone was being monitored, but what do you think is the unspoken strategy there? Why did somebody decide that we have to listen to Rob Stockey's private conversations as a matter of national security?
Well, first of all, let's actually take a step back and clarify. It's not just my phone. It's electronic communication. So my Facebook, my Instagram, my cell phone messages back and forth, the things I say, my office phone. There's no limit to what they can listen to. Like I said, I haven't seen the warrant, but because it's exigent circumstances, there is no limit on what they were hearing. When you have a criminal code warrant of this magnitude, you are talking about homicides. You are talking about high-level criminal activity, organized crime, etc. We had none of that here. We had a government that stretched the truth so far that it stole millions of dollars from donors that were supposed to go to support the truckers who were peacefully demonstrating on Parliament Hill. Now, I know a lot of people, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, even when I'm running for office under the New Blue Party of Ontario, the only party that's promising these mandates will be completely gone. I know exactly that this is a political action. This has nothing to do with public safety. It is not a public safety issue to interact with your government. There are other officers serving and retired who have been served the exact same letter as I have. So whether or not they were concerned, to be honest with you, I can't even speculate because none of us are doing anything illegal.
How many Canadians, law-abiding Canadians who are not on any kind of terrorism watch, who are not affiliated with organized crime, because of this trucker convoy protest, have had or are indeed right now having their phones wiretapped?
Oh, I have no doubt that I think there's probably two types of wiretaps going on. I think there are the illegal wiretaps going on where nobody's notified that they're being surveilled. And I think there's the other types of wiretaps going on where an application has actually been submitted because they're looking for something that they can exercise against these people.
I'm not a criminal lawyer, I'm not a privacy expert, but it seems to me that your rights were violated by this wiretap. Are you going to look at some kind of a civil suit, perhaps?
I am speaking with a lawyer right now, and I think the most important thing at this point right now, because we're just at the beginning stage, I just learned about this, is I want the public to know, do not be afraid. Do not be intimidated. Do not be afraid to stand up and tell everyone else what's going on. When I was on that float and Ezra came on, he said the same thing because he recognizes the man is Jewish. He understands what happened in the Holocaust. He understands what the government had done and made it completely legal to discriminate against people, which we saw in the Toronto Star. The disgusting things. And Ezra said, look, record, be a witness, know what's going on. And that's why I'm here on Rebel today. I want to tell the story. People need to know how serious this is. If you look at history, history repeats itself. We are watching that take place right now. We are in an urgent need for the right people to run for office, and this is why I joined the New Blue Party of Ontario, because we need to have our rights back. We need stewards who are going to be serving us, not dominating us. The only way we're going to get out of this is to realize that politics is not a spectator sport. We all have to participate if we want our freedoms back.
Well, Rob, I want to thank you so much for your time. And there you have it, folks. I mean, it's downright chilly. I mean, to quote a passage out of 1984, Big Brother is watching you. And in this case, listening to your private conversations. And again, the question arises, why? Who is being selected to be monitored in such a fashion? This is the bailiwick of a dictatorship. This is Banana Republic stuff. We're going to continue to investigate this important story because it definitely should not be happening to law-abiding citizens like Rob Stockey. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. We want to find out the scale and scope of this wiretapping operation. And we want to know who exactly was wiretapped. Former cops, political adversaries, military personnel. We have an anonymous intake form at the same website, and that is stopthewiretapping.com, where you can submit your information, and we promise you, you will remain anonymous. We want to know how many innocent people were subjected to CCP-style surveillance for their politics. We want to know who you are so that if the government comes after you again, we can help.